So one of the interesting things that's happened recently since Kamala Harris released some economic plans is that corporate media has turned on her in many ways, including outlets like the Washington Post. So I want to break this down for you. This is the anatomy of a smear of Kamala Harris because she released some pretty good policy proposals. Washington Post editorial board slams Harris, quote, disappointment of an economic rollout. Squandered the moment with gimmicks. Squandered the moment with gimmicks. The Washington Post editorial board issued a rebuke of Vice President Kamala Harris's Friday speech in which she laid out an economic vision for the country if she is elected in November. Harris notably vowed a federal ban on price gouging as she blamed inflation partially on corporate greed. Harris also vowed economic help for 100 million Americans through tax credits as well as down payment assistance for first-time homebuyers. By the way, the other thing is she said we're going to build 3 million more housing units. They didn't really mention that here, which is messed up because that's the type of thing they would theoretically agree with, but they omit the part they agree with and they're going to focus on the part that they don't. The Post editorial board was not impressed by the speech and opined Friday night it was a disappointment that was laden with gimmicks during a time when Americans are in need of serious answers. Quote, price gouging is not causing inflation, the paper's report. Come on, man. So why is the vice president promising to stamp it out? Okay. They said price gouging is not causing inflation. They said price gouging is not causing inflation. Matt Stoller reported, this was, during the supply chain issues. It was like soon thereafter. At that time, it was still 60% of inflation was blamed on corporate profits. So in other words, they took the narrative of inflation, that everybody was fear-mongering about inflation, they were scared about inflation, the media was reporting on inflation. They used that hysteria, capitalized on that moment, and said, let's just raise prices across the board. Let's just raise prices across the board. This is just a couple examples here. But Cal-Maine Foods, up 718%. Kraft Heinz, up 448%. ConAgra, up 56%. The idea that they're not price gouging because they think they can get away with it is absurd. That's literally exactly what's happening. From the New York Times, large grocers took advantage of pandemic supply chain disruptions, FTC finds. A report found that large firms pressured suppliers to favor them over competitors. It also concluded that some retailers, quote, seem to have used rising costs as an opportunity to further hike prices. We covered a Business Insider article which said this exact same thing, that, hey, here are some companies that have jacked up prices because they think they can get away with it. So again, what they're saying here is just bullshit. Oh, price gouging is not causing inflation. It absolutely the fuck is. Vice President Kamala Harris' speech Friday was an opportunity to get specific with voters about how a Harris presidency would manage an economy that many feel is not working well for them. Unfortunately, instead of delivering a substantial plan, she squandered the moment on populist gimmicks. Look, let's just call a spade here. The reason you oppose these things is because you guys are elitist. You're not populist. And you are neoliberal corporate centrists, and you want neoliberal corporate centrist solutions. Well, guess what? Neoliberal corporate centrism is not going to get us out of the damage that was made by neoliberal corporate centrism. They continue, Americans are clearly still anxious and angry about the high cost of groceries, housing, and even $5.29 Big Macs. While the inflation rate has cooled substantially since the 2022 peak, an ostensible Biden-Harris administration accomplishment, prices remain elevated relative to the Trump years. So it's a real political issue for Ms. Harris. One way to handle it might be to level with voters, telling them that inflation spiked in 2021 mainly because the pandemic snarled supply chain, and that the Federal Reserve's policies, which the Biden-Harris administration supported, are working to slow it. The vice president instead opted for a less forthright route, blaming big business. She vowed to go after price gouging by grocery stores, landlords, pharmaceutical companies, and other supposed corporate perpetrators by having the Federal Trade Commission enforce a vaguely defined federal ban on price gouging. I love this. To try to own Kamala Harris, they are defending price gouging. To try to own Kamala Harris, they are defending price gouging. And the real more important part is this line right here, blaming big business. They don't like that she's blaming big business. Well, gee, I wonder why. Could it be that Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, Jeff Bezos owns Whole Foods, and Jeff Bezos doesn't want his profits cut into? Because this policy of Kamala Harris might crack down on Jeff Bezos and his price gouging. Couldn't be that, could it? Couldn't be that you hired people who reflect that neoliberal corporate centrist ideology, and so they don't like a genuinely populist solution that would work. The board did offer some praise for Harris on her proposals to raise the child tax credit and to make health insurance and prescription drugs more affordable. Why would you support cracking down to make prescription drugs more affordable, but you don't support cracking down to make groceries more affordable? Again, where you can prove that there's greedflation going on, why wouldn't you be in favor of cracking down on it? Gee, I wonder why. What sort of conflicts do the papers have? But the newspaper questioned whether the country could afford her ideas without her offering a cheap explanation as to how she would fund them without raising taxes. Here we go. How you gonna pay for it? 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 How many times have we heard this? These motherfuckers haven't said dick about how we're going to pay for the next round of billions of dollars that goes to Israel or the billions of dollars that goes to Ukraine. They don't say anything about that. They don't say anything about the record-breaking military budgets that we do every freaking year. They don't say anything about that. But now it's, oh my God, you want to help the American people? How are you going to pay for that? Well, here's an idea. Repeal the Trump tax cuts where 83% of them went to the top 1%. There's an idea. You could do that to help pay for it, right? But the reality is they don't even bring up how you're going to pay for it if it's something that they prioritize from a moral perspective. But this, they're like, oh, helping regular working people. God, I don't prioritize that, so how are you going to pay for it? The board also wrote this. Never mind that many stores are currently slashing prices in response to renewed consumer bargain hunting. Ms. Harris says she'll target companies that make, quote, excessive profits, whatever that means. It's hard to see how groceries, a notoriously low-margin business, would qualify. Thankfully, this gambit by Ms. Harris has been met with almost instant skepticism, with many critics citing President Richard M. Nixon's failed price controls from the 1970s. Whether the Harris proposal wins over voters remains to be seen, but if sound economic analysis still matters, it won't. Oh my God, I hate these people so much. First of all, to claim this is just quote-unquote price controls, that's not true. She's not controlling across an entire industry. What she's doing is banning price gouging. So on the margins, on the extremes. By the way, there's over 30 states in the United States of America that have laws on the books banning price gouging. If a hurricane or an earthquake or some natural disaster comes and rips through and destroys an entire area, the local grocery store, the one remaining when 3 others were destroyed, cannot just jack up prices 100%. That's illegal. In some states, it's a criminal penalty. In some states, it's a civil penalty, but it is a penalty. It is against the law. It's taking that same mindset and expanding it to the realm of greedflation, where it's, oh, look, inflation is the national narrative. Now we're going to raise prices across the board. Even though inflation is not touching these products, we're going to raise the prices because we can get away with it. Why should that be allowed? This idea that if you just leave big business alone, they'll do the right thing, and the natural law of supply and demand will even everything out and everything will be hunky-dory. That's not true. The market is not some perfect emperor god king that you have to get on your knees and worship it and whatever happens, happens. No, we have to control for externalities. We have to control for a lot of the negative things that come hand in hand with the so-called, quote, free marketplace. Sometimes it gets out of whack. And you have to have rules and regulations. One of those rules can be, sorry, price gouging is illegal. You can't do it. Now, how you define it, I admit, is a debate, right? Where do you set the line? What percentage can they raise the price over a short time frame that, like, can they, obviously it's illegal for them to raise it 2%, 4%, right? But when you get into 20%, now you're sort of getting on, hey, is that too much, right? And so obviously defining it matters a lot, but the idea that we should have no discussion, should have no debate, and should have no line to determine what is and isn't reasonable is preposterous. It's like saying, hey, the NBA referee sucks, so just take the refs out of the game and just let them fucking, no. Like, what are you going to do in that scenario? It's going to be mayhem, right? Do you go with respect to call rules where if somebody says foul, it has to be a foul? Can you fight back against it and say, I don't think that was a foul? Like, no, you need some rules and regulations. What they're saying is no rules, no regulations. Let them charge as much as they want, even if there is no actual inflation hitting on a particular product. It is what it is. Let them raise it even if they have no reason to raise it. Well, that's crazy. They're arguing for big business to get away with anything and everything they want to get away with. But we need to understand these are not just honest, good faith actors, full stop. We just covered the story from More Perfect Union, how they exposed price fixing algorithms for the housing market, right? You would have this big computer program that all these landlords are a part of, and they would literally set a price, and the price is 50%, 80% higher than it was recently, and they're doing it because they can get away with it because they're all using the same algorithm. This is price fixing. That's what this is. This is making it so that, the consumer has no say. This is, pricing a roof over your head out for so many people in the country. And their response is like, hey, just let it be. But no, this is a problem. When people can't afford the basics, when people can't afford a roof over their head, This is something that needs to be addressed at the government level. Look, call a spade a spade. People like this just don't believe that government should be involved to fix problems. They think just leave it up to the marketplace, everything will work out. Well, that's not how it fucking works. I don't know what you want me to tell you. That's not how it works. All right, let's conclude here. The Post board concluded, to be sure, every campaign makes expensive promises that will never come to pass, especially with a divided Congress. Remember Mr. Biden's pledge to make community college free, even adjusted for the pandering standards of campaign economics. However, Mrs. Harris's speech Friday ranks as a disappointment. Yes, they're disappointed that she's anti-price gouging. They want to let companies charge you whatever the fuck they want to charge you, even if there isn't real inflation and they're just capitalizing on the narrative of inflation to drive up prices across the board. They think, hey, that's free market, baby. Let it be. Well, we don't agree with you. People don't agree with you. And it's pretty pathetic when you think you're, I'm really setting the record straight here by defending price gouging. Okay, well then take the next logical step. Write an article, come out and write an article and say, those 39 states in this country that have anti-price gouging laws on the state books, they should repeal them all. Let me know how that fight goes for you. Let me know how many people agree with your shitty fucking article. We really got to we really need to deconvert these fucking, they're just like convinced by the cult of neoliberalism. The idea that the market is always going to figure it out on its own. I don't know how much more evidence you need that that's not fucking true. Obviously it's not true. That the market is this pristine thing that can only do that which is efficient and right and just. It's like there are so many market failures when you leave the market on their own and they just don't see it. They just don't see it. But again, maybe it has more to do with Jeff Bezos owning the Washington Post and him not wanting to get his own price gouging crackdown on. It may have something to do with that. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.